Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And of course, we are analyzing this amazing section in Genesis, actually, where God is predicting to Abraham what he is going to do to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admat, Zeboim, and Zoar, these five cities, although we only usually read about the first two, Sodom and Gomorrah. Maybe they were the larger ones, maybe they were more wicked, I don't know. They all had reached a certain level of wickedness. So we'll take a look at this. So let's go back to the sentence here where it's discussing this, just to review this. So right here, of course, this is finishing a sentence where God is, as it were, saying to his heavenly court, should I not reveal, I think that's the way it's put, right? Should I cover up what I am doing from Abraham? And then going on with the verse that we're actually examining of Avraham, right? Abraham will be he's going to be a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. And I'm sorry, we are actually going to go on to, we are going to go on to the next verse. Ki Yadativ, I know of him, Leman Asher, so that he should command his sons and his household after him, that they should guard the way of the Lord, to practice righteousness and justice. And then again, some sort of parenthetical phrases, Leman Havi Hashem al Abraham, so that the Lord could bring on Abraham et Asher Diber Elav, Alav, that's which he had spoken concerning him, Alav, right? So let's see. We're right here. Et Banav. So we're taking apart the sentence. So Et Banav, his sons, etc. Et Banav, et Beito, lasot tzedakah mishpat, right? So looking at that part of the sentence, his sons and his household to perform acts of righteousness and justice. So analyzing this a little bit more, Banav Ladin, in other words, he should command his sons to set up law courts, courts of law, something to that effect, right? Judgment. Beito Litzedakah, his household, and this word Beito in a sense that refers to tzedakah. Remember, so it did say, right? Tzedakah mishpat. So it's associating one of those, the banav uveito. So banav would be mishpat, right? And beito would be tzedakah. And we'll try and understand this a little bit better. So why is this the case? So we're going to see this, I believe, in the Torah Temimah itself. But the word bayit, as you can see, is very closely related to the word bat, daughter. And banav, ben livnot, means to build. And there are these deep associations of building with sons and household, creating a home, domesticity, etc., with a woman. So he says, this is parenthetical here, Denashim adine lo mifakte, because when it comes to women, they are not commanded. Lifkod means to appoint, something like that, right? To administer. Adine, it's from the word din. This is Aramaic here. This expression is an Aramaic expression. So whether it means they are not commanded to administer justice, okay, or judgments. So again, this is one of those areas where our culture, of course, goes into a different place. But regardless, my responsibility is to share this with you. And this is how, of course, traditionally this would be understood as to why the sentence is set up like this. Let's take a look here. So, right here. Midayek. So how come what gave rise to this particular interpretation? Yitur halashon ve'et beito. It's the fact that there is this additional, in a sense, redundant phrase, because it could have simply said, right, that for him could have just said et banav, right? It could have said the sentence could have said, right, yitzaveh et banav acharav. Didn't have to have this phrase ve'et beito. Question? Okay, so what's bothering the person who's coming up with this particular interpretation is the fact that this phrase ve'et beito seems unnecessary. Okay, and so what he's saying is, well, then there must be a special reason why the Torah would put it in there, and that's what he's trying to work with based on traditional ways of understanding this. So that's what he's saying. Okay. Devachol makom, because in every other place, matzinu rak shem banim, because in that particular case, we only find the noun banim, sons, beyachas el hadorot ha'atidim, because generally we only find the term sons, which often will translate as children, right? I mean, literally it means sons, regarding the future generations. In other words, we might have expected the sentence to go that he would command his sons regarding in following him, and not sons and daughters. That's the point he's making here. So, vidarish beito, and so they interpret this term beito, zo ishto, that would refer to his wife. In other words, the noun beito, his house, and we've seen this already elsewhere, is very often understood to mean a wife. A wife. Going on, he's just simply explaining that the origin of this is from Masechet Shabbat, page 118, B side. V'da demikan, right? And know that on the basis of this, samach ra'aya ledat Rambam. So he's going quite a bit deeper now. And he says, on the basis of this interpretation that we've just had, there is support for the opinion of the Rambam, Maimonides, the Pirush Mitzvot, right, in his discussion of I think it could be dinim, right? Right. In his explanation of I think it is mitzvot, of the commandments regarding dinim, the justice. Shenitztavu b'nei Noach, that the sons of Noah were commanded that the inyano lohoshiv dayanim, that when the Gemara talks about the sons of Noah, and remember we had the commandments of Noah, right, the Noachide laws, that where it talks about dinim, one of those things, that he says that really that what they had to do was to set up judges ladun, to judge. And so that's how we're understanding this particular section here, that the sons, were commanded to set up courts of law, that they had to set up ways in which to administer justice, right? And then the women, etc., would be involved in acts of righteousness. Okay. V'lo Ramban. And so there is a disagreement between the Rambam, between Maimonides, and the Ramban, the Nachmanides. There's a difference of opinion. So we have Rambam's opinion that when it talks about din regarding the Noachide laws, we're talking about setting up courts to administer justice. But Nachmanides, he says in Yano that when it talks about dinim, what it's talking about is kol dinei mamonot ugzelot, that it's talking about all the laws, practicing, in other words, all the laws of finance, right, involving money. Gzelot, we know that has to do with theft or robbery. V'chavalot, damages. V'chol minei, chol minei nezikin, all kinds of damages, etc. So the Ramban doesn't understand this as setting up courts of law. he understands it as actually the legislation that has to do with these specific legal issues, both criminal and domestic. Okay. Ya'an, right. So here, why is this a support for the Rambam's view that it has to do with setting up courts of law? The Iki Purush Ramban, because if we're going to understand the dinim, right, as meaning the specific laws themselves, lo yitachen lomar. You can't say about that. She'isha lo titchayev b'chol hapratim ha'ela. You can't distinguish between men and women regarding these issues, right? I mean, here we go, right? Halo techabel utelastin mibli kol din v'onesh. After all, if a woman isn't commanded to practice these particular laws regarding theft and damages and stuff like that, right? Women would be impugned from that. We don't, and we never would say such a thing, right? Okay. So here we go. It says, wouldn't she go ahead and damage and rob mibli kol din v'onish without having to worry of any kind of repercussions? Mashe'eno kein leRambam. You can't say that that applies to the Rambam's opinion. She'inyan hu she'ein aliyah, she'ein aleha mitzvat yeshivat dayanim. Because what the Rambam is saying is it's not responsible for women to set up courts. And that's okay. If women don't set up courts, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be, that there's going to be breaking law that's rife. Excuse me. V'zeh karov le'amer. And one can indeed say this kind of thing. Uva ikar machloket Rambam, and regarding some details regarding this disagreement, Rambam v'Ramban, of the Rambam and the Ramban, bi'arnu la'el, we've already discussed this, the Parshat Bereshit, in the Parsha of Bereshit. This is in, let's see, I think, chapter 2, verse 16, Ye'uyan Sham, check it out there. And actually, I did take the time to go ahead and look into it there, where he discusses it further. I confess that at this point, we'd have to go back there and take a look at it to review what exactly it was that he discussed there. Thinking, yeah, okay. So I am going to, I'm trying to think if we should go ahead and let me see. Okay. Let me take a look. If you will allow me, I'm going to take a moment. If anybody wants to comment in the meantime, go ahead and do that. I'm going to see if I can get this to go back there. Doesn't look like I can. All right. So I'm going to, whether we want to go on or not, let's take a look. Okay. Here we go. This is actually a very lovely, lovely commentary here. Tzedakah umishpat. So, righteousness and justice. Tanya. So there's an early source that says, Shlosha simanim be'umat Yisrael. There are 3 hallmarks of the nation of Israel. In other words, if to determine exactly an Israelite, what's the character of an Israelite, there are 3 indications. Rachmanim, they're merciful. Baishanim, they're shamefaced. Gomlei Chasadim, and they do perform acts of kindness. So, Gomlei Chasadim, dichtiv, how do we know this? That they perform acts of kindness? Dichtiv, because it says, ki yidativ, because I know, this is God, of course, saying of Abraham, leman asher yitzaveh et panav, in order that he should command his descendants, ve'et beito, and his household, the sons and his household, acharav, following him, ve'shamru derech Hashem, and they will follow the path of God, of the Lord, la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat, in order to perform acts of righteousness and justice. So, on a practical level, it gives us a direction in which to try to frame our lives as Jews. Let's take a look. It appears this samach, that this particular comment is based on ma shekatuv b'chulin, what is written in Tractate Chulin, on page Kuf Lamed Dalet, it's 134, the B side of the page. The halashon tzedakah, that when we use the term tzedakah, right, inyano lifnim mishurat hadin, that the term tzedakah means going above and beyond the letter of the law. Shurat hadin, a shur, I believe, is a word for a wall, something like that. So you go beyond the definition, the legal definitions. You go beyond them. Right? Kemosha katav sham, because as it says there, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, righteousness, righteousness, you shall pursue, right? So what does it mean here? The interpretation is there. Tzedek vater mishalcha. In other words, you should forego the righteousness due to you. In other words, forego what is maybe legally due to you, mishalcha, veten lo, and give it to him. Be generous. Even when you might have a legal right to something, you should hold back. V'yein lefanenu, and see ahead of us, Reish Parshat Ekev, that at the beginning of Parshat Ekev, that's in Deuteronomy, so it's quite a little ahead of us. Let's see, Parshat Ekev, Tavo Od Rasha will bring another interpretation, L'Shoresh Midat Gemilut Chesed B'Yisrael, of the root of this quality of Gemilut Chesed, of performing acts of kindness amongst Israelites. Okay. V'yeter hashtei midot, and the other two qualities, Rachmanim, being merciful, Baishanim, and being shamefaced. So, and just to explain this term, I think the idea of Baishan means to sort of feel uncomfortable about deserving all this goodness. I think it's sort of a way of looking at one's blessings and saying, I don't know if I really deserve this lovely treatment that I'm getting. So if I'm correct about that, but I think it has to do with that sort of quality of the very reverse of entitlement, right? That I think would be a good way of understanding this particular comment, that we shun entitlement. Yitba'er, that's going to be explained lefanenu, ahead of us. Sof Parshat Yitro, and he's giving us, scenes to come at the end of Parshat Yitro. That's the parsha that deals with the giving of the Ten Commandments in Exodus. But pasuk, regarding the verse, Ulaman tiyeh yirato al pneichem, in order that the fear of him be on your faces, or in your presence. Literally, it means, of course, on your faces. Ube Parshat Re'eh, and again, the Parsha of Re'eh, that's, of course, in Deuteronomy. Pasuk, regarding the verse, V'natan lacha rachamim v'richemcha. He will give you mercy and take mercy on you. V'hanogea midavar zeh ledina, and regarding this particular aspect to halacha, right, to actually Jewish law, it has to do shemi sheyesh bo hefach hamidot ha'ela. In other words, so what's the logical implication of this? That someone who has the reverse of these particular three qualities, dahainu, that is to say, mi shehu azpanim, in other words, someone who's insolent, ve'achzar, and cruel, ve'soneh et habriot, and hates other people, ve'eno gomer lahem chesed, so that he doesn't act kindly towards them, he doesn't perform acts of kindness towards them. Chosheshim lo beyoter, we are highly suspicious of him. Shema eno mishpachat Yisrael kshe'era, that the fact is that he's really not a Jew by blood. He doesn't really come from a Jewish origin, or he's from something where there was improper relationships, etc., etc. Kevan, since she'ein bo simanei umazo, because he isn't exhibiting the indications of this particular nation, meaning the nation of Israel. V'al pi siman zeh, and because of this particular sign, dacha David HaMelech et hagivonim, and the King David turned aside the Gibeonites milavo bakal Yisrael. In other words, he would not allow them then to marry Jewish women, the Gibeonites, and it had to do with an act. Here we go. The fi shera'a otam, because he saw she'ezua pneihem, right? Because in this case, it doesn't mean insolent, but it means they were unforgiving here. They doubled back, right, or doubled down. V'lo nitpaisu, and they weren't willing to give for the others to apologize to them. They weren't reconciled. V'lo richmu al bnei Sheol, and they refused to show mercy to the children of Saul. V'lo gamlu Yisrael chesed, and they did not perform acts of kindness to the Jewish people. Limchol livnei malkam, I think this could be milkom, to forgive the children. I'm going to guess this could be milkam, or actually, it would make sense malkam. Sorry, again, just processing this. Malkam meaning the son of their king, and of course Saul was a king, and that they did not forgive the descendants of King Saul. V'hem asu imahem chesed v'hechayum, and they had performed acts of kindness, right? V'hechayum, and they allowed them to live, right? Because they were one of the Canaanite nations. There's a whole story in Joshua, how the Gibeonites tricked Joshua because they saw that Joshua was successful in his mission to destroy the Canaanites. And in fact, even after they tricked them, because they'd given their word, Joshua had given them his word that he would not destroy them, they allowed them to live. Ukimovar inyanam Shmuel bet Kafeh, and this whole business is mentioned in the second book of Samuel, page 21. Ulemedim anu, and we learn from Mim'aseh, from this particular incident, derak b'shalosh simanim ela b'yachad, that it has to do with the fact that only these particular three indications all together, chosheshim lifsol zera, that we would be suspicious to consider someone not really Jewish. Kamoshe shiv sheher'a bahem, right? As he responded, sheher'a, this I'm assuming is referring to King David, right? That he saw bahem them hefek kol hasimanim ve'azrachakam, because it was only when he saw that they had the opposite of all these three qualities, at that point he distanced them. He did not want to have anything to do with them. And we will leave that for your comments and for today. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment and see. Any thoughts? Lauren? Do you want to come off mute?
So does pikud and mitzvah, they have different connotations?
Well, they are definitely synonyms, okay? Lifkod sometimes can mean to appoint, okay? But it also can mean a duty, right? A responsibility, it probably has somewhat different connotations than the word mitzvah, which definitely has the idea of command, being commanded to do something. So that's the way I would understand this. So and as I said, the word leaf court can sometimes mean to appoint. At least that's my understanding of it. Did you have some other thought behind your question?
Oh, I was just curious
Yeah,
because because you translate as commanded, and I looked it up and it said
yes,
it was a synonym,
right.
why they would have another word when,
Well, it has more to do, I think, like with setting up, right? As a responsibility. So, Lanny, did you have a thought you wanted to share?
Not really. In one aspect, they said that the blood of the individual did not really conform to to the Jews. Uh, can you explain that a little bit more?
Say, I'm not sure I understand.
The the comment was that the bloodline, I think, of the not the
Of the
Midianites,
Gibeonites?
Gibeonites, yeah.
Right. So
The
that the Gibeonites were not Jews at all. Okay. I think he just is saying that the fact that the Gibeonites exhibited these qualities of cruelty and and refusing to forgive, etc., just showed how unconnected they were. That kind of behavior is the
but
behavior of someone who isn't Jewish.
but can you judge a complete group by just a part of the group?
Oh, okay. So again, it's a story. Right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we really have to, it's I think it is more of a point being made here than necessarily saying that sort of every single Gibeonite, that the point is that every single Gibeonite was rejected. Look, I mean that's one point, one way of looking at it. I mean, you raise obviously a valid issue. On the other hand, one could say, do sometimes the many suffer for the sins of the few? Right?
yeah.
I mean, in any situation, we've seen this so often throughout history that a number of people act in a certain way who are of a certain clan or sect or religion, and then everyone gets judged that way. We live in it. We live in it right now. There are a few Jews who maybe act in a cruel way, and all of a sudden, there are people out there who think every Jew has to act, acts that way. It's the way people operate. It's not right, but sadly, it does happen. You know, the balancing the individual against the group. I don't know
Okay.
if you want to respond to that, but
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
yeah. So, but I would tend to try and look for
Unfortunately.
Sorry, you go ahead, please.
No, I said unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, I still would rather look at it from a literary point of view and say, what lesson do we learn from this?
Yeah.
To be careful about acting in a cruel way, etc., etc., etc. So, but he is saying that there were halachic implications when you see an individual acting that way. But then he used the Gibeonites as an example. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording.